Stop. Don't drink it. Mia's voice rang out, sharp and trembling, cutting through the serene quiet of the family dinner. The room froze as Daniel, her father, looked up from his steaming cup of tea, confusion and concern etched across his face. Diana, his wife, perched gracefully at the edge of her seat, her smile faltering ever so slightly. What could a 90-year-old possibly know that would bring such tension into a peaceful evening? Why would she disrupt what seemed like a picture-perfect moment in their home? And why did Diana's eyes darken for just a fraction of a second before her cheerful mask returned? Mia had always been a bright, curious girl, but lately, something about Diana had unsettled her. A lingering glance, a suspicious whisper, a locked cabinet. Mia had pieced together clues that no one else noticed. Tonight, with her father's safety at stake, she couldn't stay silent any longer, even if it meant tearing apart the fragile happiness they had built. What secrets was Diana hiding? Why was Mia so certain that danger lurked behind her stepmother's polished exterior? And most importantly, would anyone believe her before it was too late? Dive into this gripping tale of bravery and uncover the shocking truth. But before we begin, let us know where you're watching this story from. Is it cold there? Brew yourself a warm cup of tea and gather with your loved ones to enjoy today's story together. Don't forget to hit subscribe to enjoy more amazing stories. The sun poured through the windows of the quaint kitchen as 9-year-old Mia Sullivan stood on her tiptoes, carefully arranging the contents of her father's lunchbox. The gentle hum of morning life filled their small home, a comforting rhythm that had developed since the passing of Mia's mother 5 years ago. Though their days were sometimes marked by quiet sadness, Mia and her father, Daniel, had built a warm, loving routine that kept them close. Mia's bright hazel eyes sparkled as she finished slicing the crusts off a turkey and avocado sandwich, her dad's favorite. "Daddy, you're going to be late again," she called, her sing-song voice carrying upstairs. Moments later, the hurried thuds of her father's footsteps echoed through the house. Daniel Sullivan, a devoted father in his early 40s, entered the kitchen, his tie askew and a light dusting of gray in his otherwise dark hair. He exuded a calm strength, the kind that had helped him navigate the challenges of single parenthood. As Mia handed him his lunchbox, Daniel bent down to kiss her forehead, chuckling. What would I do without my little genius keeping me on track? Their peaceful bubble, however, had been punctured 6 months ago when Diana Graham entered their lives. Diana, with her golden hair and radiant smile, seemed like a breath of fresh air, a perfect new beginning. She met Daniel at a community fundraiser and quickly won his affection with her kindness and charm. To Mia, however, Diana felt like a question wrapped in glitter, dazzling on the surface but mysterious in a way that made her uneasy. The sound of sharp heels against the hardwood floor broke the moment. Diana entered the kitchen, her tailored blouse immaculate and her makeup flawless despite the early hour. Her smile was warm as she greeted the room. "Good morning, family. Busy day ahead?" Mia watched as Diana moved with polished precision, planting a kiss on Daniel's cheek. Everything about her stepmother seemed perfect, too perfect. As Diana reached for a brightly labeled bottle in the cabinet, Mia noticed her perfectly manicured hand linger a moment too long before pulling out an unfamiliar set of pills. "Daniel," Diana said brightly, "don't forget your vitamins. Heart health is so important." She pressed the pills into his hand with a practiced air of concern. Daniel took them without hesitation, flashing Diana an appreciative smile. Mia, perched on a stool by the counter, couldn't help but feel a shiver crawl up her spine. Something about Diana's smile didn't feel right. It was almost too polished, like an actor playing a role. Her unease deepened when she caught a fleeting glance from Diana, sharp and cold, before it quickly melted back into warmth. "Mia, sweetie," Diana cooed, her voice dripping with artificial sweetness. "Don't you think it's wonderful that we're all a family now?" Mia nodded politely, her instincts telling her not to push back. But deep down, she couldn't shake the feeling that something about Diana didn't belong in their little world. That evening, as Mia sat in her room surrounded by her favorite books, her mind wandered back to the day Diana moved in. The house had felt different since then, quieter in some ways, but heavier too. Diana's perfection seemed to cast a shadow, and her influence over Daniel was growing stronger. Mia noticed the way Diana steered conversations, how her father's habits were subtly changing, and how Diana always seemed to have the last word. The unease festered in Mia's mind. She couldn't quite explain it, but her instincts told her to stay alert. She thought of her mother's advice, always trust your gut, no matter what people say. Those words rang in her ears as she made a silent promise to herself, to watch, to listen, and to protect her father, even if it meant uncovering truths she wasn't ready to face. Mia closed her book and glanced out the window at the fading sunlight. She knew deep in her heart that this perfect new beginning wasn't what it seemed. Mia Sullivan sat at the dining table, absently twirling her pencil as she stared at her math homework. From the kitchen, she could hear the rhythmic clinking of her stepmother Diana's heels against the tiled floor. Diana's cheerful humming filled the air, perfectly timed to the tea kettle's whistle. It was another quiet evening in the Sullivan household, but to Mia, something felt off. "Your special tea is ready, darling," Diana called out, her voice sweet but tinged with an edge Mia couldn't quite place. She watched as Diana carefully poured steaming liquid into a delicate porcelain cup, adding a few drops from a small amber bottle that she quickly pocketed. Mia's father, Daniel, walked in, loosening his tie. He looked tired, his usual energy dimmed after weeks of adjusting to his new routines. Diana greeted him with a radiant smile, handing him the cup like she was presenting a prize. "Here you go, sweetheart. It's that blend I mentioned, the one for energy and heart health." Daniel took the tea without question, sipping it gratefully. "Thanks, love. I don't know what I'd do without you." Mia's brow furrowed. She couldn't shake the feeling that Diana's actions were too deliberate, too calculated. It wasn't just the tea. Over the past few weeks, Diana had been introducing all sorts of healthy habits into their lives: vitamins, smoothies, and even strict meal plans. It seemed harmless on the surface, but Mia couldn't ignore the unease bubbling inside her. Diana glanced at Mia, her smile never wavering. "Mia, sweetheart, why don't you join us for a cup? I can make a decaf version for you." "No thanks," Mia replied quickly, her tone more curt than she intended. Diana's smile faltered for a fraction of a second before she turned back to Daniel, resuming her role as the doting wife. Later that evening, as Mia headed to her room, she heard the faint murmur of Diana's voice coming from the study. The door was ajar, and Diana was on the phone, her tone sharp and hushed, a stark contrast to the cheerful facade she usually wore. "I told you to wait." "No, it's not the right time yet. We stick to the plan," Diana hissed, pacing the small room. Mia froze in the hallway, straining to catch more of the conversation. "I don't care what the delay is, just handle it." Mia's heart raced. She tiptoed closer, pretending to adjust a photo frame on the wall. Diana's voice dropped further, making it harder to hear. Suddenly, Diana turned toward the door, and Mia darted into the bathroom, her pulse pounding in her ears. The next morning, Mia decided to keep an even closer eye on Diana. She noticed the way her stepmother meticulously arranged the bottles in the kitchen cabinet, her movements almost ritualistic. Mia had seen enough detective shows to know when someone was hiding something. She made a mental note to inspect the cabinet later, when Diana wasn't around. "Daddy," Mia ventured that evening as they sat at the dinner table, "have you noticed anything different about Diana?" Daniel looked up from his plate, his expression puzzled. "Different how, sweetheart?" "I don't know, like the way she's always on the phone, or the new bottles in the kitchen. And she's been locking the office door a lot." Daniel chuckled softly, reaching over to ruffle her hair. "Mia, Diana's just busy with work. And those bottles are vitamins, nothing to worry about. You know, change is hard, especially for kids your age. It's normal to feel unsure about having a new stepmom." Mia bit her lip, frustration welling up. "But it's not just that. I've seen." "Mia," Daniel interrupted gently but firmly, "Diana is trying her best to make us a happy family. Give her a chance, okay?" Mia nodded reluctantly, though her gut told her not to let it go. The opportunity to investigate came sooner than expected. That Friday, Diana left to run errands, leaving Mia alone in the house. Seizing the moment, Mia crept into the kitchen and opened the cabinet where Diana stored the bottles. Inside, she found a mix of vitamins, herbal supplements, and a few bottles with long chemical names she didn't recognize. One of them matched the amber bottle Diana had used for the tea. She unscrewed the cap and sniffed cautiously. The liquid inside had a sharp, medicinal smell that made her nose wrinkle. It didn't seem like any herbal remedy she'd ever heard of. Quickly, she pulled out her phone and snapped pictures of the labels. If her dad wouldn't believe her, she needed proof. As she carefully replaced everything, she heard the sound of Diana's car pulling into the driveway. Her heart leaped into her throat as she hurriedly shut the cabinet and darted back to the living room, pretending to read. Diana entered with a bright smile, carrying shopping bags. "Mia, darling, I picked up something special for dinner tonight. Your favorite, lasagna." "Thanks," Mia said, forcing a smile. Diana's eyes lingered on her a moment too long before she turned toward the kitchen, her heels clicking ominously against the floor. That night, as Mia lay in bed clutching her favorite stuffed animal, she couldn't shake the feeling that Diana was hiding something dangerous. Her father's tired face flashed in her mind, and she felt a surge of determination. She had to protect him, even if he didn't believe her yet. For now, all she could do was wait and watch. But Mia knew one thing for certain. She wasn't imagining things. Diana's mask was slipping, and it was only a matter of time before the truth came to light. The morning sunlight barely warmed the corners of Mia Sullivan's heart as she sat at the breakfast table, nibbling at her toast. Across the table, her father, Daniel, sipped from his now familiar cup of Diana's special tea, his exhaustion visible in the sag of his shoulders. Diana sat beside him, her polished demeanor as flawless as ever. Every move she made was precise, calculated, and, to Mia, unervingly rehearsed. "Darling," Diana said, her voice syrupy sweet, "I've been thinking. Maybe we should update our family's insurance policies now that we're officially a household. You know, just to make sure Mia is taken care of if anything ever happens." Daniel raised an eyebrow but nodded, clearly trusting Diana's judgment. "That's probably a good idea." Mia's stomach twisted as she watched Diana's lips curl into a smile. There was something predatory in her gaze, but Daniel didn't seem to notice. Mia bit her tongue, knowing that voicing her suspicions would only earn her a gentle dismissal from her father. Later that day, as Diana busied herself with errands and Daniel worked late, Mia found herself alone in the house. She wandered through the rooms, her curiosity gnawing at her like an itch she couldn't scratch. Her mind kept returning to Diana's cabinet in the guest room, the one she had tried to inspect but hadn't fully explored. The cabinet was locked, a detail that only deepened Mia's suspicion. She approached the guest room cautiously, her steps silent on the carpeted floor. The room was impeccably neat, as Diana always kept it. Mia knelt in front of the cabinet and ran her fingers along its edges, searching for any weakness in its lock. It reminded her of the secret compartments she read about in her mystery novels, and her pulse quickened with a mix of fear and excitement. "Think, Mia," she whispered to herself, glancing around the room. She remembered a small toolkit in the garage that might have what she needed. Within minutes, she returned, armed with a flathead screwdriver and a determination that outweighed her fear. The lock was basic, and with a few careful twists, it clicked open. Inside, Mia found an array of neatly arranged documents and bottles similar to the ones she had seen in the kitchen. The bottles bore the same long, unreadable chemical names, but the documents beneath them stole her breath. There were medical forms, insurance papers, and notes scribbled in Diana's tidy handwriting. One note read, "Finalize policy changes by next week. Full payout guaranteed upon confirmation of natural causes." Mia's heart pounded in her chest. She didn't fully understand what the papers meant, but the words payout and natural causes were enough to make her blood run cold. Before she could process what she had found, the sound of the front door opening sent a jolt of panic through her. Diana was home. Mia hurriedly replaced the items and closed the cabinet, hoping the lock would hold. She darted into the hallway just as Diana's heels echoed through the house. "Mia," Diana called out, her voice light but with an edge of suspicion. "What are you up to?" "Just looking for my book," Mia replied quickly, holding up a novel she had grabbed from the guest room shelf. Diana's eyes narrowed slightly as she approached. "You're such a curious girl, aren't you?" she said, her tone laced with something darker. "But you know, curiosity can sometimes lead to trouble." Mia forced a smile, her heart hammering. "I wasn't doing anything, I promise." Diana's gaze lingered for a moment before her smile returned, though it didn't reach her eyes. "Dinner will be ready soon. Why don't you go wash up?" Mia nodded and walked away, her hands trembling as she clutched the book to her chest. She didn't dare turn back, but she could feel Diana's gaze burning into her back. That night, Mia lay awake in her bed, replaying the events of the day. She had never felt so alone. Her father was oblivious to the danger lurking in their home, and Diana seemed to be growing more suspicious of her every move. But Mia couldn't ignore the evidence she had seen. She knew she needed to act, but how? As she stared at the glow-in-the-dark stars on her ceiling, she thought of her mother. "Trust your gut, Mia," her mother used to say. "It'll never steer you wrong." The thought gave her courage. Whatever Diana was planning, Mia was determined to uncover the truth and protect her father at all costs. The house was quiet except for the occasional creak of the floorboards. Mia tiptoed to her door and opened it a crack. She could see the faint glow of light from Diana's office down the hall. As she crept closer, she heard Diana's voice again, low and sharp. "No, it has to happen soon," Diana was saying. "He's already showing signs. The tea is working. We just need a few more doses, and then everything will fall into place." Mia froze, her breath caught in her throat. Signs? Doses? She didn't understand it all, but the malice in Diana's voice was undeniable. Mia knew she didn't have much time to act. Diana's perfect mask was slipping, and her plans were becoming clearer. Mia retreated to her room, her mind racing. She needed a plan, and she needed help. But most of all, she needed to stay one step ahead of Diana, before it was too late. The Sullivan house hummed with the sounds of preparation. Diana's sharp heels tapped methodically against the tile as she moved between the kitchen and dining room, humming a cheery tune. The scent of roasted chicken and rosemary filled the air. Rare culinary effort from Diana herself. Tonight's dinner was, as she declared earlier, extra special, a celebration of family. Mia sat at the kitchen counter, pretending to focus on her homework. In reality, her sharp eyes followed Diana's every move. The words she overheard last night still echoed in her mind. A few more doses, and everything will fall into place. Her gut told her tonight was the night Diana planned to act. Diana turned toward her with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Mia, sweetie, could you set the table? Your father will be home soon." "Of course," Mia replied, forcing a smile of her own. She hopped off her stool, grabbing the stack of plates Diana had set out. As she walked to the dining room, her mind raced. She needed to act fast. By the time Daniel arrived home, the dining table was set with Diana's finest china and candles flickered softly, casting a warm glow over the room. Diana greeted him at the door with her signature bright smile, helping him with his coat and offering him a cup of her special tea. "Just what you need after a long day," Diana cooed, handing him the steaming cup. "It's my best blend yet." Daniel chuckled, taking the tea without hesitation. "You're spoiling me, Diana." Mia, watching from the doorway, felt her chest tighten. She couldn't let him drink that tea. Not tonight. She stepped forward, her voice light but urgent. "Daddy, can I show you something first? It's really important." Daniel smiled indulgently. "Can it wait until after dinner, sweetheart?" "It won't take long, I promise," Mia said, glancing at Diana, whose smile had stiffened ever so slightly. "Just a minute, please." Diana's grip on Daniel's arm tightened, but she quickly smoothed her expression. "Why don't you go, darling? I'll make sure everything stays warm." Daniel hesitated, looking between them. "All right, Mia. Lead the way." Mia led her father to the living room, using the moment to distract him while Diana returned to the kitchen. Her heart pounded as she tried to think of how to stall him. "I've been working on a drawing," she said quickly, grabbing a sketchbook. "Can you tell what it is?" Daniel squinted at the paper, smiling. "It's a horse?" "A giraffe," Mia corrected, her nerves showing in a giggle. But close enough. Meanwhile, Diana prepared the tea again, her movements precise and deliberate. From her apron pocket, she pulled out the small amber bottle Mia recognized all too well. As Diana added several drops to the tea, her eyes flicked toward the living room. Satisfied that she wasn't being watched, she stirred the cup with meticulous care. Mia returned to the dining room just in time to see Diana placing the cup at Daniel's seat. "Dinner's ready," Diana called sweetly, her voice carrying through the house. As Daniel took his seat, Mia acted swiftly. "Oh, let me get the bread," she exclaimed, darting into the kitchen. She grabbed a second cup and carefully switched it with the one Diana had prepared, her small hands trembling as she worked quickly. When she returned, she placed the untouched tea in front of her father and took the doctored one to her own seat. She lifted the cup to her lips, pretending to sip. The tea smelled off, sharp and chemical, nothing like the herbal blends her mother used to make. Diana's eyes darted toward Mia, her gaze narrowing. "Everything okay, Mia? You haven't touched your tea." Mia smiled nervously. "It's just hot. I'm letting it cool." Diana's eyes lingered a moment longer before she turned back to Daniel, her demeanor relaxing as she watched him eat. "I'm so glad we can all be together like this," she said, her voice dripping with warmth. "Family is everything." Mia's stomach churned. She couldn't let this charade continue any longer. She needed help, and fast. The next morning, Mia made her way to Miss Linda's house before school. Linda, their kind-hearted neighbor and a nurse at the local clinic, had always been a trusted presence in Mia's life. If anyone could help, it was her. Mia knocked on the door, clutching a small bag containing the remains of the tea she had saved the night before. Linda opened the door, her face softening when she saw Mia's anxious expression. "What's wrong, sweetheart?" Linda asked, ushering Mia inside. Mia hesitated, then poured out everything. Diana's suspicious behavior, the locked cabinet, the documents, and the tea. She handed Linda the bag. "Can you test this? I think there's something in it. Something bad." Linda's face grew serious as she examined the bag. "These don't look like normal herbal ingredients," she said thoughtfully. "I'll take it to the lab today and see what we can find. But Mia, if you're right, this is serious. Does your father know?" Mia shook her head, tears pricking her eyes. "He won't listen. He thinks I'm just making things up." Linda knelt down, placing a reassuring hand on Mia's shoulder. "You did the right thing coming to me. We'll figure this out, okay? In the meantime, you need to be careful around Diana. Don't eat or drink anything she gives you, and keep your distance if you can." Mia nodded solemnly, feeling a small weight lift off her chest. She wasn't alone anymore. Someone believed her. As Mia walked to school, her heart felt lighter but still wary. The storm brewing in her home was far from over, but she had taken the first step toward uncovering the truth. The thought of Diana's carefully crafted mask slipping brought a glimmer of hope. But deep down, Mia knew the battle was just beginning. Dinner was unusually tense that evening at the Sullivan household. The air felt heavy, laden with unspoken words and veiled intentions. Mia sat quietly at the table, her fork idly pushing peas around her plate. Across from her, Diana was the picture of poise, her bright smile plastered in place as she filled Daniel's glass with water. "I thought we could toast to new beginnings tonight," Diana said, her voice sweet but carrying an edge Mia had come to recognize. "It's been such a joy building this family together." Daniel, oblivious to the undercurrent in Diana's tone, raised his glass with a smile. "To us," he said warmly. Mia clenched her hands under the table, her heart pounding. She had spent the day preparing for this moment. The evidence she had gathered, the photos, the recordings, and the sample of Diana's poison tea, was stored safely on her tablet and uploaded to a cloud account Miss Linda had helped her set up. Now, it was time to act. As Daniel reached for the teacup Diana had placed before him, Mia's voice cut through the moment. "Wait, Daddy." Diana's smile tightened, her eyes flicking toward Mia with a sharpness that betrayed her frustration. "Mia, darling, this isn't the time for interruptions." "It's important," Mia said, her voice trembling but determined. She turned to her father, her hazel eyes pleading. Please, Daddy. Stop. Don't drink that tea. Daniel looked at her, his brow furrowing in confusion. Sweetheart, what's wrong? Diana laughed lightly, though her fingers gripped the edge of the table. Mia, really? You've been so dramatic lately. It's just tea. No, it's not, Mia said firmly. She pushed back her chair and stood, clutching her tablet. It's not just tea. It's poison. The room fell into stunned silence. Daniel stared at Mia, his expression a mix of disbelief and concern. Mia, what are you talking about? Diana's mask began to crack, a flicker of panic flashing across her face. This is ridiculous. You're scaring your father with these wild accusations. Mia ignored Diana and turned to Daniel, tears pooling in her eyes. Daddy, please listen to me. I've been watching her. She's been adding something to your tea, something from a bottle she hides in the cabinet. I took a sample to Miss Linda, and she's having it tested. It's poison, Daddy. That's why you've been so tired lately. Daniel opened his mouth to respond, but Mia didn't give him the chance. She tapped on her tablet and projected a recording onto the living room TV. Diana's voice filled the room, sharp and cold, from the conversation Mia had captured days earlier. A few more doses, and everything will fall into place. He's already showing signs. The tea is working. Daniel's face paled as the recording played. His eyes darted toward Diana, who was now sitting stiffly, her hands gripping the arms of her chair. That's not, Diana began, but Mia interrupted her again. I also found these. She swiped through photos on her tablet, showing the bottles from the locked cabinet and the documents detailing changes to Daniel's life insurance policy. Daniel's hands trembled as he stared at the screen. Diana, what is this? Diana forced a laugh, though her voice was shaky. It's nothing, Daniel. Vitamins and supplements, like I've said before. And as for the insurance, I was only trying to protect our family. You forged my signature on these papers, Mia said, her voice steady despite the fear bubbling inside her. Miss Linda showed me what a real signature looks like, and this isn't his. The room descended into chaos. Diana's polished facade shattered as her frustration boiled over. You ungrateful little brat, she snapped, rising from her chair. Do you know how hard I've worked to keep this family together? Do you know what I've sacrificed? Daniel stood, his face dark with anger. Sacrificed? Diana, what are you talking about? What have you done? Before Diana could respond, the sound of sirens pierced the air. Red and blue lights flickered through the windows as police cars pulled into the driveway. Mia's heart leaped with relief. Miss Linda had called Detective Claire Thompson, who was already aware of Diana's actions. She had promised to intervene before it was too late. The front door burst open, and Detective Thompson stepped inside, flanked by 2 officers. Diana Graham, we have a warrant to search the premises and a court order for your arrest, she announced, her voice firm. Step away from Mr. Sullivan and put your hands where we can see them. Diana's eyes darted wildly around the room. This is harassment. I haven't done anything wrong. The officers moved swiftly, restraining Diana as she struggled. You don't understand. He's mine. He was supposed to. Her voice broke off in a scream as the officers led her out the door. In the aftermath, Detective Thompson stayed to debrief with Daniel and Mia. She reviewed the evidence Mia had collected, nodding with approval. This is thorough work, Mia, she said. You've likely saved your father's life. Daniel turned to his daughter, his voice thick with emotion. Mia, I'm so sorry. I should have listened to you. Mia hugged him tightly, tears streaming down her face. I just wanted to protect you, Daddy. I couldn't let her hurt you. As the police finished their search, one of the officers emerged from the guest room with a box of incriminating evidence, bottles, forged documents, and a handwritten timeline of Diana's plan. Looks like we've got enough to lock her away for a long time, Detective Thompson said. She turned to Mia with a soft smile. You're a brave young lady, and you did the right thing. That night, the Sullivan house was quiet for the first time in months. Daniel and Mia sat together on the couch, holding each other close. The storm had passed, but the scars it left behind would take time to heal. Mia glanced up at her father. Are you mad at me? Daniel shook his head, his voice steady. "No, sweetheart. I'm proud of you. You trusted your instincts, and you saved me." Mia smiled, feeling a warmth she hadn't felt in a long time. They were safe now, and for the first time in months, the house felt like home again. The Sullivan house was unusually quiet the morning after Diana's arrest. Mia woke up to the smell of coffee, but it wasn't the usual rich blend Diana had insisted on. It was simpler, black coffee, the kind her dad used to drink before Diana came into their lives. She patted down the stairs to find Daniel sitting at the dining table, staring at a steaming cup in his hands. The sunlight streaming through the window illuminated the exhaustion etched into his face. "Morning, Daddy," Mia said softly, sliding into the chair across from him. Daniel looked up, his eyes softening when they met hers. "Morning, baby girl. Did you sleep okay?" Mia shrugged. "I guess. It feels weird without her here." Daniel nodded, setting his cup down. "Yeah, it does. But it's a good kind of weird, don't you think? Peaceful." Mia didn't answer right away. Instead, she reached across the table and took his hand. "I'm sorry I didn't tell you sooner. I was scared you wouldn't believe me." Daniel squeezed her hand, his voice thick with emotion. "Mia, you don't ever have to apologize for trying to protect me. I'm the one who should be sorry for not listening, for not seeing what was right in front of me." That day, Daniel and Mia began the process of reclaiming their home. The first step was getting rid of everything that reminded them of Diana. Together, they boxed up her clothes, her curated tea set, and the countless trinkets she had used to decorate their house. Each item they removed seemed to lift an invisible weight off their shoulders. The guest room, which had been Diana's private domain, was the hardest for Mia. It felt like walking into a lair of secrets. But as they emptied the room, it started to feel less like Diana's space and more like just another part of their home. By the time the last box was sealed, the house felt brighter, almost as if it could breathe again. Word of Diana's arrest spread quickly through their small neighborhood, and the community rallied around the Sullivans. Miss Linda was the first to arrive, bringing a warm casserole and her trademark comforting smile. "I told you, Mia," she said, hugging her tightly. "You're just like your mama, strong and smart. She'd be so proud of you." Other neighbors followed, each offering their own form of support. The Rodriguez family brought over dinner, while Mr. Chan from next door installed a new security system at no charge. Even grumpy old Mr. Davis, who rarely spoke to anyone, showed up with a freshly baked apple pie. The warmth and kindness of the community overwhelmed Mia. She hadn't realized just how many people cared about her and her father. "Why are they all being so nice?" she asked Daniel that evening as they sat on the porch, watching the sunset. "Because you were brave," Daniel said, wrapping an arm around her shoulders. "You stood up for what was right, even when it was hard. That kind of courage inspires people." As the days turned into weeks, the wounds Diana had left behind began to heal. Daniel started seeing a therapist, and Mia joined him for some sessions. Dr. Andrea Williams, their therapist, was kind and patient, helping them navigate the complicated emotions they both felt. One afternoon, during a session, Daniel turned to Mia. "You know," he said, his voice steady, "I've been thinking a lot about what you did, how you trusted your instincts, even when I didn't." Mia looked down at her hands, unsure of how to respond. "I want you to know," Daniel continued, "that I'll never doubt you again. If you ever feel like something's wrong, I'll listen. I promise." Mia's eyes filled with tears as she nodded. "Thanks, Daddy." Mia's bravery didn't just resonate at home. It spread throughout her school and community. One morning, her principal called a special assembly to recognize her actions. Standing on the stage, Mia felt a wave of nervousness, but the sight of her father's proud smile in the audience gave her the courage to speak. "I didn't think I was brave," she told the crowd. "I was scared the whole time. But my mom always told me to trust my gut, and I'm glad I did. If you ever feel like something's wrong, don't ignore it. Speak up, even if it's hard." The auditorium erupted into applause, and Mia felt a warmth she hadn't felt in a long time. For the first time, she truly believed she had done something good. At home, Daniel and Mia created new routines to replace the ones Diana had forced upon them. Saturday mornings became pancake days, with Mia taking charge of the batter while Daniel flipped the pancakes. In the evenings, they sat together on the couch, reading or watching old detective shows, Mia's new favorite genre. One weekend, Daniel surprised Mia with a visit to the local animal shelter. "I thought it was time we added a new member to our family," he said with a grin. Mia's face lit up as she met a floppy-eared golden retriever named Max. "Can we keep him?" she asked, already in love. Daniel laughed. "I think he's already decided we're his family." As the months passed, the scars Diana had left began to fade. Mia still had moments of fear, waking up from nightmares where Diana's cold smile haunted her dreams. But each time, Daniel was there to comfort her, reminding her that they were safe now. One evening, as they sat on the porch watching the fireflies dance in the yard, Mia turned to her father. "Do you think things will ever feel normal again?" Daniel smiled, his eyes soft. "Normal's overrated," he said. "But I do think we'll feel happy again. It's already starting, don't you think?" Mia nodded, leaning against him. For the first time in months, she felt a sense of peace. Their family wasn't perfect, but it was theirs, and that was enough. The air in the new neighborhood felt lighter, almost as if the past couldn't follow them here. The Sullivan family's new house was a modest two-story with a wraparound porch and a yard big enough for Max, their newly adopted golden retriever, to run around in. Its bright yellow siding and white trim stood in stark contrast to the darker memories of their old home. For Daniel and Mia, it marked a fresh start, a chance to rebuild without the shadows Diana had cast. "I still can't believe we live here now," Mia said, standing in her new bedroom, a space filled with possibilities. The walls were a soft lavender, the color she'd chosen herself, and the large window overlooked a tree-lined street where kids played after school. Daniel leaned against the doorframe, smiling as he watched her unpack. "What do you think, baby girl? Ready to make this place home?" Mia nodded, her heart swelling with hope. "Yeah, I think so." The move had been a whirlwind of packing, organizing, and saying goodbye to their old neighborhood. Their neighbors had gathered to see them off, showering Mia with hugs and kind words. Miss Linda even handed her a small notebook, its cover decorated with flowers. "It's for your detective work," Miss Linda said with a wink. "Something tells me you're going to solve a lot more mysteries in your life." Mia clutched the notebook to her chest, her smile wide. "Thank you. I'll use it for something really important." In their new home, Daniel and Mia began creating new traditions to fill the void left by the chaos Diana had caused. Saturday mornings became dedicated to pancake experiments, with Daniel trying out outrageous recipes like blueberry chocolate chip or banana cinnamon. Evenings were for puzzles or board games, the kind that sparked laughter and easy conversation. One day, as they walked Max through their new neighborhood, Daniel turned to Mia. "How about we try something different for dinner tonight? Your pick." Mia thought for a moment. "How about tacos? With lots of guacamole?" Daniel grinned. "Deal. But you're in charge of the guac." As they walked back home, Max trotting happily beside them, Mia realized something. Their life wasn't just healing, it was growing stronger. Part of their healing process involved therapy. At first, Mia was hesitant to open up to Dr. Andrea Williams. She didn't want to relive the fear and anxiety Diana had caused, but Dr. Williams had a way of making her feel safe. Their sessions became a place where Mia could unpack her emotions and learn how to cope with her lingering fears. "Mia, Dr. Williams said during one session, you've been incredibly brave through everything you've faced. But bravery doesn't mean you have to carry everything on your own. It's okay to lean on others." Mia nodded, absorbing the words. "It's just, sometimes I feel like I have to fix everything." "You have a strong instinct to protect," Dr. Williams replied. "And that's a gift. But remember, asking for help doesn't make you weak. It makes you wise." Outside of therapy, Mia found solace in writing. She filled Miss Linda's notebook with her thoughts, recounting her experience with Diana in meticulous detail. It wasn't just cathartic, it was empowering. She began sketching diagrams of the locked cabinet she had opened, jotting down notes about what she'd observed, and even imagining how a detective might solve the case differently. One evening, Daniel peeked into her room and saw her hunched over the notebook, completely absorbed. What are you working on, detective? He teased. Mia looked up, her face lighting up. I'm writing about everything that happened. And I think I want to learn more about how detectives work, like how they find evidence and solve mysteries. Daniel walked in and sat beside her. That's a great idea, Mia. You've got the mind for it, and more importantly, you've got the heart. Inspired by Mia's growing interest, Daniel signed her up for a local junior detectives workshop at the community center. The program, led by retired police officers, taught kids observation skills, basic forensics, and problem-solving techniques. Mia threw herself into the workshop, eager to learn everything she could. She loved practicing how to analyze fingerprints and decipher clues. Her instructors were impressed by her natural curiosity and attention to detail. She's got a knack for this, one of them told Daniel after a session. You've got a real investigator in the making. Daniel couldn't have been prouder. Watching Mia thrive in an environment where she felt empowered was the best gift he could imagine. One evening, as they settled on the couch with bowls of popcorn, Mia turned to her father. Do you think Mama would be proud of me? Daniel placed an arm around her, pulling her close. She'd be more than proud, Mia. She'd be amazed. You're everything she dreamed you'd be, kind, smart, and brave. Mia leaned against him, her heart full. Thanks, Daddy. As the credits rolled on the movie they were watching, Daniel said, By the way, there's something I've been thinking about. How would you like to turn the guest room into your own detective office? Mia's eyes widened. Really? My own office? Really? Daniel said with a grin. You can decorate it however you want. Set up your notebook, your books, whatever you need. Every great detective needs a headquarters. Mia beamed. That's the best idea ever. As the days turned into weeks, the new house began to feel like home. The lavender walls of Mia's room were soon adorned with posters of her favorite characters, and her detective office took shape with shelves of books and a corkboard for pinning ideas. One night, as she sat in her office, she wrote in her notebook, The hardest part of a mystery isn't finding the clues, it's knowing what to do with them. But I think I'm getting better at that. And maybe one day, I'll help other people solve their mysteries, too. For the first time in a long time, Mia felt a sense of peace. Their new life wasn't perfect, but it was theirs, and it was filled with hope. The gymnasium was buzzing with excitement. Rows of chairs lined the polished wooden floor, filled with students, teachers, and parents. At the front, a small stage was adorned with balloons and a large banner that read, Celebrating Courage, Honoring Our Hero, Mia Sullivan. Mia shifted nervously in her seat near the stage, her fingers fidgeting with the hem of her dress. I don't know if I can do this, Daddy, she whispered to Daniel, who sat beside her. You've got this, Daniel reassured her, his smile warm. Just remember, all these people are here because they believe in you. You've already done the hard part. Mia glanced around the room, spotting familiar faces. Miss Linda, her teacher Mr. Hartwell, and even grumpy old Mr. Davis, who gave her a rare thumbs up. The sight steadied her nerves. The principal stepped up to the podium, adjusting the microphone. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us today to honor someone very special. Mia Sullivan has shown us that courage and intuition can make a difference, no matter your age. A ripple of applause spread through the crowd. Mia felt her cheeks flush as her name echoed through the gym. The principal continued, Mia's bravery in a challenging situation didn't just protect her family. It inspired all of us to trust our instincts and speak up when something feels wrong. Today, we celebrate her as a role model for our community. As the applause grew louder, Mia felt Daniel squeeze her hand. Go on, kiddo, he said with a proud grin. You've earned this. Mia rose from her seat and walked to the stage, her heart pounding. She reached the podium, gripping its edges tightly as she faced the crowd. For a moment, the sea of faces overwhelmed her. But then she spotted her dad, smiling up at her, and her confidence returned. Hi, Mia began, her voice shaking slightly. I don't really know what to say, but thank you. I didn't think I was brave when everything happened. I was scared, and I didn't know if anyone would believe me. But my mom always told me to trust my gut, and I'm glad I did. She paused, glancing at the crowd. If there's one thing I learned, It's that being brave doesn't mean you're not scared. It just means you do what's right anyway. And it's okay to ask for help. Sometimes we can't do everything on our own. The audience erupted into applause. Mia felt a swell of pride as she stepped back from the podium and returned to her seat. The ceremony ended with a standing ovation, and the crowd surged toward Mia, offering congratulations and words of encouragement. Miss Linda enveloped her in a hug. "You've got a bright future ahead of you, kiddo," she said, her voice brimming with emotion. Mr. Hartwell, her teacher, chimed in. "You've set an example for all of us, Mia. I wouldn't be surprised if we see your name in the news one day as a top detective." Mia smiled shyly. "Thanks, Mr. Hartwell. That's what I want to be, a detective. I want to help people." In the days that followed, Mia's story spread beyond her school. The local newspaper featured her on the front page, calling her the young hero who saved her family. Neighbors began stopping by to thank her, and other kids at school started looking up to her. One afternoon, a sixth grader named Ellie approached Mia in the hallway. "Hey, Mia, can I talk to you?" Mia nodded, sensing the girl's nervousness. "Sure, what's up?" Ellie hesitated, then whispered, "I think my friend is being bullied, but she doesn't want to tell anyone. What should I do?" Mia's heart swelled. "You should tell a teacher or an adult you trust," she said gently. "Even if your friend is scared, it's important to speak up. You're doing the right thing." Ellie smiled, looking relieved. "Thanks, Mia. I'll do that." Helping others began to feel natural for Mia. She started a small group at school called Trust Your Gut, where kids could talk about their worries and learn how to recognize when something was wrong. The group quickly grew in popularity, with students sharing stories and supporting each other. Daniel watched from the sidelines, his pride in Mia growing with every new step she took. One evening, as they sat on the porch swing, he said, "You're really making a difference, Mia. Your mom would be so proud of you." Mia leaned against him, her notebook resting on her lap. "Thanks, Daddy. I just want to help people. Kind of like what detectives do." Daniel chuckled. "You've got the heart of a detective, that's for sure." Mia's dream of becoming a detective only grew stronger. She spent hours in her new office, reading books about solving mysteries and practicing skills she had learned at the Junior Detectives Workshop. She even set up a corkboard with strings connecting photos and notes, just like the ones she had seen in detective shows. One afternoon, while reorganizing her notebook, Mia wrote a new goal at the top of the first page: help people, solve mysteries, and make the world safer. It wasn't just a dream anymore, it was a promise. As the weeks turned into months, Mia's confidence blossomed. Her school and community recognized her not just for her bravery, but for her ability to inspire others. She had become a role model, not by trying to be perfect, but by being herself, honest, determined, and compassionate. One night, as she stared up at the glow-in-the-dark stars on her ceiling, Mia smiled. She didn't know what the future held, but she knew she was ready for it. She had faced fear and uncertainty and come out stronger. And now, she was ready to take on whatever mysteries lay ahead. The courthouse loomed tall and imposing, its stone walls etched with years of history. Mia Sullivan clutched her father's hand as they walked up the marble steps. The trial of Diana Graham had drawn considerable attention, with reporters and cameras stationed outside, eager to catch a glimpse of the woman at the center of a chilling case. Mia kept her head down, trying to block out the buzz of whispered questions and flashing lights. "Are you okay, baby girl?" Daniel asked, his voice low and reassuring. Mia nodded, her grip tightening around his hand. "Yeah, I just want this to be over." Daniel knelt slightly, looking her in the eyes. "No matter what happens today, I'm proud of you. You're the reason we're here, and you're the reason we're safe." Mia nodded again, her chest swelling with both nerves and pride. Together, they entered the courthouse, ready to face the next chapter of their journey. The courtroom was filled with a quiet tension as the trial began. Diana sat at the defendant's table, her once polished appearance now marked by exhaustion. She wore a plain suit, her hair tied back in a way that seemed designed to downplay her former glamour. Her expression was calm but steely, her eyes darting occasionally toward Mia and Daniel. The prosecution wasted no time presenting their case. They detailed Diana's systematic manipulation, starting with her forged documents and her attempts to poison Daniel for financial gain. The evidence Mia had collected, photos of the bottles, recordings of Diana's incriminating conversations, and samples of the Dr. T, took center stage. These recordings were captured by Mia Sullivan, the prosecutor said, gesturing toward the witness stand where Mia now sat. At just 9 years old, she displayed remarkable courage and intelligence, gathering critical evidence that uncovered the defendant's plot. Mia's heart raced as the prosecutor asked her to recount what had happened. She spoke clearly, her voice steady despite the weight of the moment. "I knew something was wrong," she explained. "Diana was acting strange, and I saw her putting drops from a bottle into my dad's tea. I took pictures and recordings because I needed proof. I didn't think anyone would believe me otherwise." The courtroom murmured with admiration as Mia finished her testimony. She caught her father's gaze from the audience, his pride evident in his soft smile. The defense tried to discredit Mia's evidence, arguing that a child's observations could be unreliable. But the prosecutor was prepared, calling Miss Linda to the stand to verify the lab results of the poison tea and Detective Thompson to testify about the documents and bottles found in Diana's locked cabinet. Piece by piece, Diana's facade crumbled. The court learned that she had a history of deception, including a previous marriage in which she had manipulated her partner into signing over assets before disappearing with the money. Emails and financial records painted a clear picture of her calculated approach to targeting vulnerable individuals. As the evidence mounted, Diana's calm exterior began to crack. Her lawyer's objections grew increasingly desperate, but there was no escaping the overwhelming weight of the truth. On the final day of the trial, Diana took the stand in her own defense. Her voice was measured, her words laced with an air of victimhood. She claimed that her actions were misunderstood, that she had only been trying to help the family and secure their future. But the jury wasn't convinced. The prosecutor delivered a scathing closing argument, pointing out the meticulous planning Diana had undertaken and the sheer disregard for human life she had displayed. As the jury deliberated, Mia and Daniel sat together in the hallway outside the courtroom. Mia's hands were folded tightly in her lap, her mind racing. "What if they don't believe us, Daddy?" she whispered. Daniel placed an arm around her shoulders. "They will, Mia. The truth is on our side." After several hours, the jury returned with their verdict: guilty on all counts, including attempted murder, forgery, and fraud. Diana's sentence was swift and decisive: 20 years in prison, with no possibility of parole for the first 15. The courtroom erupted in a mix of relief and emotion. Mia exhaled a breath she hadn't realized she was holding as Daniel hugged her tightly. "It's over, baby girl. We're free." Diana was led out of the courtroom in handcuffs, her eyes meeting Mia's one last time. There was no apology, no regret, just a cold, calculating stare that sent a shiver down Mia's spine. But she stood tall, unflinching. Diana no longer held power over her. In the days following the trial, life began to settle. For the first time in months, Mia and Daniel could focus on rebuilding without fear hanging over them. The closure brought by Diana's conviction gave them the freedom to fully embrace their new beginning. One evening, as they sat on the porch swing, Mia looked up at the stars and asked, "Do you think she'll ever feel sorry for what she did?" Daniel was quiet for a moment before replying, "I don't know, Mia. Some people don't change. But what matters is that we're safe now, and she can't hurt anyone else." Mia nodded, leaning her head against his shoulder. "I'm glad we told the truth, even if it was hard." Daniel smiled, wrapping an arm around her. "You taught me something important, to trust my instincts and to trust yours. You're braver than I ever could have imagined." Mia smiled, her heart full of hope. For the first time, she felt like she could look forward without the shadow of the past holding her back. The summer sun shone brightly as Mia Sullivan climbed out of the car, her backpack slung over one shoulder. The sprawling campgrounds of the Junior Detectives Summer Academy stretched out before her, complete with obstacle courses, training tents, and rows of cabins nestled beneath towering pine trees. It was everything she had dreamed of and more. "This place looks amazing," Mia said, her excitement barely contained as she turned to Daniel. Daniel smiled, adjusting the strap of her bag. I knew you'd love it. You've earned this, Mia. This is your time to learn, grow, and have some fun. Mia nodded, her heart swelling with gratitude. Thanks, Daddy, for believing in me. Always, Daniel said, pulling her into a hug. Remember, no mystery is too big for you to solve. The camp turned out to be a perfect fit for Mia. She spent her days honing her observation skills, learning basic forensics, and practicing deduction through carefully designed games and challenges. Each lesson sparked her passion for detective work, and for the first time in a long while, she felt a deep sense of belonging. At night, as she lay in her bunk staring at the glow-in-the-dark stars on the ceiling, she thought about her own journey. The challenges she had faced, the fear, the uncertainty, had shaped her into someone stronger, someone who believed in the power of her instincts. She knew now that courage wasn't about never being scared. It was about standing up, even when fear threatened to paralyze you. Back home, Daniel was starting a new chapter of his own. He had taken a job at a smaller accounting firm, one closer to their new house, and the change had done wonders for his spirit. The long hours and high-pressure demands of his previous job had been replaced with a healthier balance, giving him more time to focus on Mia and himself. Their home had settled into a peaceful rhythm. Max the golden retriever became a constant source of joy, bounding around the yard and curling up beside Mia as she worked on her detective projects. The once empty guest room had transformed into a vibrant detective headquarters, complete with shelves of books, a corkboard for notes, and even a small magnifying glass Daniel had gifted her. Their weekends were filled with pancake experiments, trips to the park, and late-night movie marathons. Each new tradition brought them closer together, reinforcing the bond that had carried them through their darkest days. When Mia returned from camp, brimming with stories and new skills, she and Daniel sat on the porch swing, their favorite spot for reflection. The evening air was warm, and fireflies danced in the distance, their tiny lights flickering like stars. "Did you have a good time at camp?" Daniel asked, his arm resting around her shoulders. "It was amazing," Mia said, her eyes shining. "I learned so much, and I made friends who love mysteries as much as I do. I think I really want to be a detective one day." Daniel smiled. "You're already a detective, Mia. What you did for us, that wasn't just bravery. It was skill, determination, and heart. I know you're going to do great things." Mia rested her head against his arm, a contented sigh escaping her lips. "I couldn't have done it without you, Daddy. You taught me to believe in myself, and to trust my instincts." Daniel chuckled softly. "I think you taught me more than I taught you. You reminded me that no matter how much we think we know, sometimes it's the smallest voices that tell the biggest truths." As they sat in the fading light, Mia thought about everything they had been through. The fear, the heartbreak, and the triumphs had all been part of their journey. It wasn't just about catching Diana or escaping her manipulations. It was about rediscovering the strength of their family, the trust, the love, and the unbreakable bond they shared. "Do you think Mom would be proud of us?" Mia asked softly. Daniel's voice was thick with emotion as he replied, "She'd be so proud, Mia. She'd see how brave, kind, and smart you are, and she'd know you're carrying her spirit with you every day." Mia smiled, feeling a deep sense of peace. "I think so too." Their story wasn't just one of survival. It was a testament to the power of family, to the strength found in love and trust. It showed that even in the darkest moments, there is light to be found, if you're willing to fight for it. Mia had learned that courage could come in the smallest packages and that speaking up, no matter how scary, could change everything. As the stars began to appear in the sky, Daniel leaned down and kissed the top of Mia's head. "You know what, Detective? The future is looking pretty bright for us." Mia grinned, her heart full. "Yeah, it is." And as they sat together, looking out at the night, they knew that no matter what mysteries or challenges lay ahead, they would face them together, with trust, courage, and love lighting their way.